Hey, this is HQ. Uh, we have our crime and body cam series where we speak about relationships and things that happen, the goofy things that happen in relationships. So I wanted to review, instead of just a body cam review, I wanted to do a review of this relationship in which this couple, this couple are accused of beheading a coworker because of jealousy, because of feelings of inadequacy that this man had in his relationship with his wife. He lured a coworker, him and his wife lured a coworker to a park and beheaded the coworker. And now I thought, what do you mean by behead? What do they mean by behead? So behead to me means you take a knife or a saw or a something and chop the head off. But that wasn't particularly what they did to this man. They lured him to a park. They lured him somewhere, and then they ended his life, all because he liked this young woman, right? So my whole thing is this, and we're going to do this disclaimer. When does self-preservation in a marriage, when does self-preservation in a marriage kick in? Or when is it supposed to kick in? Because self-preservation is a normal instinct. When you're in danger, you're supposed to heed that instinct, right? And self-preservation is like a natural thing, okay? But in cases of abuse, which we hear that this was a part of this relationship, it doesn't always kick in right away. And that's not a sign of weakness. It's not. Abuse, especially emotional abuse or psychological abuse, can distort a person's sense of danger, their self-worth, reality. But there are certain signs in which self-preservation is supposed to kick in. And apparently with this young lady, she was married to this man, they never kicked in. It never said, let me get out of it. Or maybe she was too afraid to get out of it. We don't know. But self-preservation is supposed to kick in as soon as danger is sensed, as soon as the anger is uncontrollable in the other person. But trauma complicates this sometimes, right? In healthy situations, in healthy marriages, relationships, I guess, if someone is being hurt or mistreated, the natural response is to leave, right? To fight back, to get help, to do whatever you got to do. But when abusers manipulate the person, I love you, I wouldn't do this, I want to control you, but I love you, I need to tell you what to do because you don't know what to do. The victims get emotionally and financially and physically manipulated and confused, and then this makes them start to question their thought processes in the relationship, right? Over time, it can delay, it could suppress your instincts for your self-preservation or for your self uh, 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 survival, right? And then a lot of people, when they get into these abusive relationships, they stay because they don't trust themselves. Sometimes, it's supposed to kick in, this self-preservation supposed to kick in, in moments of clarity, but there's fear. Sometimes a single incident is so freaking wild and so freaking out of there that it just makes you pop out makes you say, I'm not going to put up with this. Self-preservation for me would kick in when I'm a woman. To me, a woman who has children should never not see that self-preservation coming, should never be in a situation where when she has children, she's abused. Because you have to have the fear. The fear for my child would make me not be there. The fear for my child would make me run, would make me protect myself. Because I would think if I wasn't here, then the child would be left to the devices of this person. Many survivors report that they finally got out of it. They finally left when the person started to abuse their child, which I wouldn't wait for that to happen. As soon as I knew I was pregnant and this person was abusing me, I would like to think that I would get out of it. I just have too many family members, it just would make me kick in and say, I gotta go. Because I would be embarrassed, of course. Of course I would be embarrassed, right? But it would make me kick in. But then people have to have support as well. You have to have support. It has to be there. You have to know that it's there. You have to believe that it's there. You have to be supported. And you have to feel like you got a safe place to go. Okay? And sometimes when a person understands that the abuser or the person that is supposed to love them won't stop doing what they're doing, that also makes it kick in. Okay? But it's never too late for self-preservation to kick in. When you get to the point where something is against your moral code or against your code of ethics. See, that's why people should have their own code of ethics or their morality code. They should have something that tells them, I won't go this far. Okay? Even if somebody stayed in this relationship for years and years, the moment they decide to act, whether it's setting boundaries or leaving or reaching out to other people, this is an act of self-preservation. So to me, I kind of, I understand sort of, kind of, but this young lady did not look at any kind of self-preservation. And she continued with this marriage, even though this marriage was horrific, So we're going to get into it and let's listen. Okay.
On Thursday, May 26, 2022, 32-year-old Armando Barone was convicted of murdering his wife's coworker, 25-year-old Jonathan Emerald, in a brutal act of jealousy and rage. The crime took place in a remote New Hampshire park near the Massachusetts border, and it didn't end with a gunshot. Armando forced his own wife to decapitate the body. At trial, prosecutors said the motive was simple but deadly. Blind, unrelenting jealousy after Armando discovered messages between his wife and Jonathan on Snapchat. Under oath, Brittany Barone testified that her husband beat her, threatened her, and demanded that she take Jonathan's life.
Do it. Shoot him.
What did you tell him back?
No.
Did you say whether you could do this?
I was like, I can't. Yeah, I can't.
Brittany says he then ordered her to stand on his throat.
And I could hear John struggling, he was trying to breathe.
Brittany says Amaral begged for his life and hers, promising to never talk or see her again. Armando, she says, was undeterred.
But how do we get to this point? How do you find yourself as a woman, as a man? How do you find yourself in the middle of a jealous tirade and nothing stops you? Nothing snaps you out of it. She understands that what's going on is wrong. She understands that. He apparently is blind with jealousy and doesn't understand that. Okay. What happened to the young man's self-preservation? The young man right here, pictured here. What happened to his instincts that said something was amiss when he got out of the car and saw that husband? What kicked in? I don't know. See.
And John said, what? He said, look at her. Do you still think she's pretty? And John looked at me. He said, yeah, I do.
So she stood on his neck. She stood on his neck. How does that happen? How does that happen to another human being who takes the life of another human being? So her sense of fear was so great that she's willing to take another person's life. So this person doesn't take her life. She takes another person's life. How does that make sense in your mind to get to that point? Okay. I mean, this is terrible. This is terrible, right? And I'm trying to figure out, does she face any consequences to this? Right? Because before this got to this point, I kind of blame her to a certain extent. Why? Because she knew how her husband was. You knew your husband was the way he was. But you let it happen anyway.
Marriage can be one of life's greatest sources of joy. But when trust breaks down, it can also become one of life's greatest stressors. According to the 2022 General Social Survey, about 20% of married men and 13% of married women admitted to having sex outside their marriage. Of course, depending on how you define cheating, the numbers climb even higher, up to 70% of married Americans. The emotional fallout from adultery is often severe: betrayal, guilt, depression, broken families, and, for many, divorce. But in some cases, it escalates. A study published in the Journal of Women's Health found that jealousy is often used as a weapon by abusers seeking to control their partners. In those cases, it's not just about heartbreak. It's a warning sign for something far more dangerous: homicide.
And this is the scary part. People don't understand when it's time to exit. When is it time to exit relationships when this has gotten to this point, right? Abuse. Abuse is a serious, serious breach of the marital contract. And it should be the first instance in which you leave a relationship. Abuse, physical, emotional, psychological. If you're being hit, threatened, manipulated, gaslighted, or degraded, it's time to go. Don't ask questions. Don't try to figure out whether they did it or they didn't do it. Abuse often escalates. This is why when we have conversations and people say, oh, I'm not going to allow her to do that. I have to control my wife. I have to run my relationship. I have to tell her what to do. She doesn't understand. She's not smart enough. This is the instinct of women kicking in saying, no, that's a psychological thing. Women are not interested in getting into some relationship where you say these things. Remember the things that you say when you want a relationship. Those are the things you don't say, right? And people say, no, they don't mean that, HQ. They don't mean that. Then don't say that, right? For example, your spouse throws things, yells, punches walls, argues all the time, belittles you, makes you feel worthless, scared. Those are not just small things. Those are big things. When they cheat all the time, cheat, lie, do all these things. People think cheating one time is good. No, cheating is a choice. Cheating means you don't respect the other person or you cannot control your impulses. Addiction, when you're addicted to something. This is one of the worst ones. That's why I would never date people who smoke weed. I would never date a person that did anything beyond alcohol, and maybe not even alcohol. But that's just me.
Jonathan Amaral was born in Rangeley, Maine on January 27, 1995. He was raised and educated in Milford and graduated with honors from the Rochester Institute of Technology in 2018 with a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering. He worked for Teleflex Medical as a biomedical manufacturing engineer. Jonathan was an avid sports fan with a deep passion for the outdoors, whether it was hiking, snowmobiling, skiing, or riding an ATV. He was active in the region's hiking community, often sharing advice and stories from his adventures on social media. He had climbed 66 of the region's 67 mountains over 4,000 feet, including all 48 peaks in New Hampshire. In addition, he had hiked all but one of the 100 highest peaks in New England. But for Jonathan, who had fallen for someone he couldn't have, the final summit would come not on a mountain trail, but in the shadows of betrayal. Brittany and Armando Barone grew up together in Las Cruces, New Mexico. They married young, teenagers, after what Brittany described in court as pressure from Armando's deeply religious mother, who insisted they were living in sin. In 2007, they tied the knot. The children came quickly, 3 in total. They eventually moved across the country to Jaffrey, New Hampshire, hoping to build a life together. Brittany was the family's breadwinner, working full-time as a machine operator at Teleflex Medical. Armando stayed home to homeschool the kids, but there were signs of instability. Armando didn't have a bank account, no vehicle in his name, no clear employment record. He had once enlisted in the U.S. Army, but later deserted. That's a serious offense under military law, punishable by confinement, loss of pay, dishonorable discharge, and if done in wartime, even death. He was discharged under other than honorable conditions to avoid a court-martial.
So off the bat, she had an idea that he was unstable. She had an idea, right? All along, she had an idea. See, this is what should have kicked in. They said the children came pretty quickly. The children came pretty quickly, okay? Which meant they probably weren't using any birth control. She probably didn't know nothing about birth control. He probably told her she couldn't use birth control. Many things, because a lot of people feel like if you're in a relationship or you're in marriage, you shouldn't use birth control. Sometimes, somewhere along the way, you had an idea that this person was unstable. They wouldn't work, unenrolled in the Army, wouldn't keep a job, all of these things. Somewhere. Damn, we can't even do something positive on Father's Day. That's for you and your family to do, Mitron. But here, she figured out that this was an unstable human being. But she continued with the marriage. She continued with the relationship, even though she was being beat. She was being terrorized, all of these things. So she never got it. So it never kicked in. That self-preservation never kicked in for her, even after she had children. Wow.
By 2020, their marriage was cracking. According to Brittany, Armando had cheated on her and physically assaulted her throughout the relationship, although no charges were ever filed. Then came September 12th. Brittany had finally built up the courage to ask for a divorce, but Armando didn't take it well. His response wasn't dialogue, it was a right cross to the face. 1 week later, on Saturday, September 19th, he went through her phone and found flirtatious Snapchat messages between Brittany and a coworker. His name was Jonathan Amerault.
How did you two communicate during that week?
First it was Facebook, and then he said he didn't like Facebook, so we started text messaging each other, just SMS.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to Snapchat.
And do you remember who set up that Snapchat conversation, him or you?
I don't remember who initiated that.
Okay. I believe you said before that you were logging out of your phone at this time?
I was.
Yeah. Why were you doing that? Explain that for the jury.
I didn't want Armando to see that I was talking to a guy.
Did you ever go with John or see John outside of work?
Yes, I did.
How many times?
Once.
Where did you guys go?
There was a park in Peterborough. Edward McDowell something like that. It was like a dam. And we went and we parked and talked about work and the people that we worked with and his boss. And
What time of day was this that you guys went and did this?
it was between 3 and 4
3 and 4 in the
in
afternoon?
the afternoon. Yes.
All right, so this is after your shift gets over with.
Right after work. Yeah.
I did take it 3 or 4 afternoons. I'm going to assume daylight outside.
Yes.
What did you explain to him about your relation? I'm sorry, what did you explain to him about what relationship you were looking for? What did you say to him about that?
I said I couldn't offer anything more than friendship. I said, I don't mind getting to know you. Like, you're a very nice person, but I don't even know if I like you, at this point. I don't know what kind of music you listen to. I don't know if you can, like, if I can just be around you as a friend, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't mind getting to know you, but I can't promise you anything more than that.
Wow. Okay. So she's being honest, but she's being dishonest because she's in a relationship with her husband, and she understands that this man has jealousy, or he has issues with her, in a relationship. She can't tell me she wasn't getting kicked and punched and all that other stuff prior to this, right? Prior. So yet and still she involved another human being. And this is where she's culpable. Of course she's culpable. She's culpable up to this point. She's culpable up to the point where she knew what was going to happen if her husband found out she was seeing another person. She knew that he had a jealous or a dangerous attitude. She knew that. So therefore, why would you pull someone into that whole thing when you were already getting beat? You're already getting treated unfairly. You were already getting the brunt of, the abuse. Why would you draw someone else in? And this is where I find she's culpable. This is one area where she is all guilty for the beginning of this whole scenario. She's guilty for that. Okay. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. I'm reading in the chat. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there. We praise the good fathers. We praise the fathers, period. We do all of those things. So Meteoron came in. Damn, we can't even do something positive on Father's Day. We don't do we do positive on Father's Day. You do positive to your father. We do positive to our father. Everybody does positive things for Father's Day. That doesn't mean I have to do positive father things on my panel. I don't understand what that means. I don't understand what that means. Meteoron's HQ voice. What do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean. Human beings are human beings. If she's a shitty human being, just like her husband. I'm confused about it. No, I understand what you say, black man's fair. I understand. If you don't have the love or you don't feel the love, you need to get the hell on. Get the hell on, regardless of whether it's a mother, father, you got 10 kids by her or 1 kid by her. This guy suffered from uncontrollable jealousy. It can lead to emotional abuse and control. Nobody wants to be controlled. Let's be clear. Let's make that clear to everybody that's listening. Nobody wants to be controlled. No man wants to be controlled. No woman wants to be controlled. Even though we hear that word control all the time on these panels, stop saying control, because nobody wants to be controlled. Nobody. When you tell me you got to control my behavior because you're my husband, you turn me off. And most women get turned off when they hear that word. So stop saying it.
Was it in your mind when you said stuff like this, were you these questions that you had that you wanted answered before to see whether or not to start a relationship with him?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Were these questions that were in your mind, what music you listened to, getting to know him, were you asking these questions because in your mind you were thinking about maybe starting a relationship with him?
I thought there might have been potential, but I wasn't planning on a relationship.
Okay. Did you tell him that you were at the time that you had asked for a divorce from Armando before you met him? met with him and went out to McDowell Park.
I did.
So you knew that?
Yes.
After you sat with him there at the park and you guys are talking,
Yes.
what was so special about Jonathan?
He was very kind. He was very sweet. Like he was really funny. And like he didn't show that on the floor because he was in professional mode, but he was really funny.
How was he different when you were in person with him here at the park? When you say he's in professional mode?
Yeah, like he doesn't really joke around and he doesn't really talk very much if it's not about work. And like seeing his personality outside of work, I was like, man, you're really cool. You're a really cool guy.
So
And when a person is being abused and they meet somebody that is really seems genuinely nice, seems like they're a genuine person, and they're not mean or spiteful, it's like a whole nother world that they meet. It's like, oh, I didn't know anybody could be nice. I didn't know anybody could be so, and especially you like me. You like me and I'm a piece of shit because I'm dealing with this person over here and I can't get away from this person over here. I'm a piece of shit, but you still like me. It's like a whole nother world when they meet somebody that actually wants to get to know them, wants to get to know their wants, needs, desires, and has no desire to put their hand and feet on them. So this is partly why she's crying, because she understood that was a nice guy that liked her. And she didn't see any way out of dealing with her husband because he was a piece of shit.
there were other people at the park while you're meeting with him there?
I think there was one other car parked there.
And you guys were just in a parking lot?
Yeah.
How did Jonathan get you back to Teleflex?
He drove me back.
And is this his car? Is that the Subaru? You know,
Impreza, yeah.
when he, at the end of that time together, when you were at the park, was there any physical touching or interaction between the two of you?
Yeah, so when he dropped me off outside the big parking lot, the main employee entrance.
The one in the back?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Why there?
because I didn't want Armando to see, like, if Armando ended up showing up, I didn't want him to see that I was being dropped off by anybody. Like, I was supposed to be at work.
Okay. So when he drops you off, where do you go?
Straight inside. And then I went out to the other exit and went to my car. Like,
Okay. So let me go back to my other question. Is there any kind of physical interaction between you and Jonathan at the end of that trip to the park?
yes, I kissed him
Where were you guys when you kissed him?
right out the door, right outside the door.
Right outside the employee door there? At the
Yes.
back?
So she's initiating. She's scared to deal with him. She's scared to deal with him because she understands what her husband is about. She's scared to deal with him, but she's scared to believe that maybe he likes her. She initiates the kiss, knowing full well she shouldn't be doing any of those things. Let's be clear. Everyone, her and her husband are the two suspects, two people in this situation who did all of this. Okay. She did a lot. It's reminiscent of the Cassie and Diddy thing, where you abused me. I felt so bad, but this is an obvious case of it. This is an obvious case because if she has records of being abused, kick, punch, all those good things, she does have records of those things. She can say she was coerced into doing whatever she did. And she understands by kissing this man, she crossed the line. She knows she crossed the line, and she's going to have to live with the guilt. She's going to have to live with the guilt of what she did with this young man. How she pulled this young man into doing whatever happened to him. It's wild.
And his charcoal gray Subaru Impreza gone. Detectives followed up with Teleflex, who confirmed Jonathan never reported for his shift. But there was something else. Another employee also missed work that morning. Unlike Jonathan, though, she had called in to resign. That employee was Brittany Barone. Staff also mentioned that the two were rumored to be romantically involved, even though Brittany was married. That detail pointed investigators toward Jaffrey, New Hampshire. At a modest multifamily home with an attached apartment, detectives spoke with Armando Barone's mother. She said Brittany and Armando had gone hiking in northern New Hampshire and she was watching their children. When asked where the couple lived, she pointed to the apartment next door. Officers left with the information, but they weren't done. Later that night, around 10:20 p.m., they returned. A 2008 Jeep Patriot was parked out front. It was registered to Armando's mother's boyfriend, and this time, Armando was home. When officers asked where his wife was, Armando said he hadn't seen her since 2 a.m. Sunday. He claimed she told him she was going camping with friends, so he dropped her off near Temple Mountain. He said he was too distraught over the state of his marriage, so he just continued driving, ended up in Errol, New Hampshire, some 195 miles away, and later turned around. He told officers he and Brittany had been texting until around 7 a.m. that morning. But while police were hearing one story from Armando, another was starting to unfold. Investigators spoke with one of Brittany's close friends, who handed over a string of group texts sent between Sunday morning and Monday afternoon. In those messages, Brittany said she wouldn't be seeing her children anytime soon, that she was starting over in New Mexico where her sister lived, and that she'd taken a new job. She also messaged Jonathan directly, saying she couldn't talk to him anymore and needed space from Armando. Curiously, when asked where she was, Brittany wouldn't say.
So they're trying to set up an alibi, right? And the dumbest criminals seem to think that they can always get away with evidence or getting rid of evidence. See, if they're any kind of normal couple, most people knew there was jealousy involved. And you can get text messages. And you can find out she can erase her text messages, but they can't erase his text messages. So the police would be able to get his phone records and find out who was the last person that he talked to. Where was his phone last seen, pinged on the tower? When did he go? Where did he go? Find out their cell phone records. That's where you start. Who did he speak to last? Where did his phone end up last? Oh, his phone ended up last where? Oh, he spoke to her last? Oh, okay. Let's see where her phone records are. Let's see where her phone records were at 12:25 when his phone records were here. Oh, okay. He didn't come back. See, that's how dumb criminals get caught. And they don't know. So they're trying to set up an alibi. Oh, we went hiking. Oh, we did this and that. All because of the jealousy. And then they would have to dig into whether there's been phone calls, whether there's been incidents of jealousy, abuse. Because uncontrollable jealousy, apparently he couldn't control it. He abused her all throughout that relationship, right? But see, uncontrollable jealousy comes from insecurity, fear, or a need to control or dominate another person. A jealous spouse can accuse a person all the time of them doing things, even though they haven't done things, accuse them of cheating, monitoring their phone conversations, monitoring their whereabouts, their go to and from, isolate them from family and friends. These are things that are red flags. This kind of possessiveness undermines a person's sense of self and their freedom. Okay. And this is a classic case of emotional abuse. She was in it.
Nearly a full day after Jonathan was reported missing, two hunters headed into Wayside Park to check on a bear baiting site they had recently set up. They drove down the trail to make sure no one had wandered too close to their bait. When they arrived, they spotted something unexpected, a tent. They honked their horn, and a woman emerged with a small dog. She was wearing sunglasses, and right away the hunters noticed she seemed to be hiding something, her eyes. They told her the area was an active hunting site just about 100 yards from where she was camped and informed her that overnight camping wasn't allowed on the property. She claimed she didn't know about the hunting site or the no camping rule. After leaving the woods, the hunters contacted the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department to report the violation. Later that day, 2 fish and game officers arrived at the site. As they approached the tent, a dog began barking. A woman, Brittany Barone, stepped out from a worn path to the side of the tent. The officers immediately noticed a pistol secured in a pouch around her waist. Just behind her was a large brown tarp covered in sticks and branches, an obvious attempt to conceal whatever was underneath. The officers told her she needed to leave immediately as she was trespassing. As Brittany gathered her things and walked toward one of the patrol vehicles, she muttered under her breath, "I'm in big trouble." While she packed, one of the officers noticed drag marks in the mud leading to another brown tarp, this one shaped unmistakably like a human body.
So she out there trying to cover up the body. You out there trying to cover up the body. What the hell is going on that your husband said to off this person, according to you, and you're out there trying to hide a body by yourself? Why are you by yourself? Where is your husband? Where is he? This is wild.
Out in September of 2020 to lure Jonathan Amirault to a park. Armando Barone allegedly used her phone to message him.
At one point, he stomps on his face.
Brittany described a relentless assault when the 25-year-old engineer arrived, and then the moment Armando allegedly forces her to join in.
Kill him. Do it. Shoot him.
What did you tell him back?
No.
Did you say whether you could do this?
I was like, I can't. Yeah, I can't.
Brittany says he then ordered her to stand on his throat.
And I could hear John struggling, he was trying to breathe.
Brittany says Amirault begged for his life and hers, promising to never talk or see her again. Armando, she says, was undeterred.
And John said, "What?" He said, "Look at her. Do you still think she's pretty?" And John looked at me. He said, "Yeah, I do."
Brittany says her husband forced John Amirault into the hatchback of his own car headfirst. John's last words were, "I thought you were going to let me live," before Armando shot Amirault 3 times.
And this is where I ask myself, she can't shoot him. No, she can't off Jonathan, but you can let this person off Jonathan. So why didn't she just off her husband right then? It would have ended her suffering. It would have ended Jonathan's suffering. She has a witness right there that says he wanted me to do this, or I could not do it. I could not allow this person to do it. You see how, and she probably would have been charged with something, but she probably wouldn't have went to prison. More than likely, she would not even went to prison. At that moment, she should have ended the life of that husband because she had a witness right there. I mean, I get it. People can't understand how to act in the moment, in the heat of the moment. I get all of that. But a moment of clarity, when you want someone to end another person's life, you have to think of the bigger threat. And the bigger threat, and she had a gun holstered to her hip. according to police earlier in the park. Okay. Later on in the park, after the person had been shot, she had a gun on her hip. And she decided at that point that her husband's life was worth more than Jonathan's life. And I don't understand that at all. And I understand abuse and all of that, but I just don't understand that at all. You had an opportunity to end all of that suffering. She did, and she did not.
And John says, waiting, so you were going to let me live? And her mother said, yes, that means both of us liars.
After Brittany's statement, authorities moved fast. There was enough probable cause to get Armando on domestic assault. However, investigators also feared for the safety of the Barone's 9-year-old daughter, who may have witnessed part of the violence. Apprehending Armando became the top priority. A BOLO alert was issued and the phone was pinged. The data showed he was no longer driving the Jeep. He was heading north, back toward Errol. At 7:25 p.m., a detective left him a message. Armando returned the call using a different number. When the detective explained they were investigating Brittany's disappearance and asked him to come to the station, Armando became defensive.
That's the whole point. She let, and I get it. There's abuse. People are you're under the thumb, you're under the abuse. And sometimes when they have the opportunity to end the abuse, they do not end the abuse. Why don't they end the abuse? Why? She had the gun. She had the gun on her hip. According to police, she had the gun. So if you had the gun, you should have shot you, or you had an opportunity to get the gun. Why didn't you try to save Jonathan's life right along with your life? And I get it. People are going to say hindsight is 2020. I get all of that too. But where is the self-preservation? Where is the self-preservation for a good man? And you knew he was a good man. You knew your husband was not a good man. And all of the laws on this possibility, when the laws are normally slanted toward women, according to people, the laws are slanted towards women. Why didn't you, in that whole, your suffering, Jonathan's suffering, everybody's suffering, if you had access to the gun? And this is what I say. She's as culpable as her husband, right? Because it did not have to go that far. She's as culpable as he is. But she just didn't do the physical act. That's all. Sort of like Cassie and Diddy. But you can't hold them because they didn't do the actual act.
I don't understand, he said. I've been fired from jobs many times for not showing up, and nobody ever came looking for me like they're looking for Brittany. The detective replied, we have a missing person. We need to physically see her. We can't just take your word for it. Armando claimed the last time he spoke to Brittany was Monday at 5 p.m. He said he couldn't come in because he had plans to go camping and wanted to explain the situation to their daughter. When the detective offered to meet halfway in Bristol,
Right.
Armando responded, can't do that. I don't want my daughter seeing me talking to police. He eventually agreed to drive to Jaffrey, but he never showed. Instead, his phone was tracked heading in the opposite direction through Franconia. It was clear he had no intention of meeting with police.
So he's on the run. He's not dumb. He might be mentally ill, but he's not dumb. So he understands that the police are after him. Okay. As he said, nobody's coming to see me after I didn't come to work, and they're looking for her. But he's not stupid. So he heads in the run, and he has a child. I think he has a child with him. You have to proceed with caution too. This is why he ain't stopping for them. He's not looking for them. He's not waiting for them, right? He's not waiting for them to come and get him. He taking off. He gone. But they eventually catch him, right? Exactly. Hey, Rose. Exactly. There's no way I would like to think. I'm saying I would like to think. Me as being a good person, I would like to think that I would have ended the suffering of both of us in that way. I would like to think that, but I've never been abused, so I don't know how my mind would process doing that, right? So I want to say I want to be right there, man. No, I'm not gonna take somebody else's life. Yours the life that I'm gonna take. If I got to take anybody, I'm gonna end my suffering, and I'm not gonna let you hurt this innocent person. But we don't know, right? We don't know what she went through.
Well, quick dry cement, a shovel, and a blue tarp. Not a single grocery bag. He was arrested immediately for assaulting Brittany. At the time, officers observed scratches and dried blood on his wrist and forearm. He was Mirandized and asked for a lawyer. Meanwhile, the 9-year-old was interviewed by a forensic specialist. She confirmed her parents had argued days earlier, but said her grandmother moved her before she could see anything else. Later that day, Brittany led police to a wayside park. There, they recovered Jonathan's belongings, his ID, credit cards, garage door opener, and located the shallow grave where his head was buried. On September 24th, an autopsy was performed which documented bruises inside Jonathan's mouth and on his face, along with a distinct shoe impression on the right side of his head. The injuries corroborated Brittany's account that she had been ordered to step on Jonathan's neck. The cause of death, a gunshot wound to the head. The manner, homicide. That same day, Brittany Barone was arrested for her role in Jonathan's death, but not for murder.
I want to discuss what you were and were not charged with in terms of crimes. You were charged, as you said yesterday, with falsifying physical evidence.
Yes,
And 3 counts of that, correct?
that is correct.
1 count for cleaning Mr. Amaralt's vehicle.
Yes.
A 2nd count for wrapping his body in a tarp and
Yes.
dragging it into the woods.
That's correct.
And then the 3rd count for decapitating Mr. Amaralt's body.
Yes.
And the same prosecutors that are here in this courtroom, Attorney Agati and Attorney Chase, they were the prosecutors on your case as well.
That's correct.
And they made the decision what to charge you with and what not to charge you with.
Objection, Your Honor.
You were not charged with assaulting Mr. Amaral.
No, I was not.
You were not charged with standing on his neck.
No, I was not.
Not charged with slitting his wrists.
No, I was not.
And you weren't charged with killing him.
No, I was not.
You pled guilty, as you said yesterday, to those 3 charges of falsifying physical evidence,
I did.
pursuant to a plea agreement that you discussed yesterday.
That is correct.
A plea agreement that you and your attorney made with Attorney Agati and Attorney Chase.
That is true.
And under the terms of that plea agreement, you have already been released from the prison.
That is true.
You recently met with those same prosecutors, correct? Attorney Agati and Attorney Chase?
Well, she got charged with some things. You know, she got charged with her role in the offing of Jonathan. She got charged, right? And she pleaded guilty. She didn't try to do anything. She pleaded guilty and she served her time. After the fact, these things occurred after the fact. She didn't do the initial act. And if she has stuff to back up the fact that she did these things, or she did these things because she was coerced into doing these things, she's not the same as him. She's not the same as the husband. She's lesser to a lesser degree, and I get it. She pled guilty to the 3 things that she pled guilty to. Okay. And this young man and this young lady is out of prison by the time her husband is going for the murder. But all of this was avoidable, and we get it. All of it was avoidable. Okay. And all because everything physically culminated in her taking his life because she was afraid, fear. We don't know. Who knows why she did all of that? We don't know. And she didn't take her husband's life instead. We don't know what these people mentally go through.
Chase?
That is correct.
And met with them prior to your testimony yesterday?
That is correct.
Met with them to prepare your testimony?
To prepare myself for the trial.
And to testify at this trial?
Ultimately, yes.
Although Brittany Barone was not charged with murder, her role in the cover-up was serious. She faced multiple felony charges, including falsifying physical evidence and abuse of a corpse. But her cooperation with authorities and her willingness to testify would soon place her at the center of the state's case against Armando. And when the trial finally began, it was clear. Prosecutors intended to let Brittany do the talking. In their opening statements, the prosecution laid out a chilling timeline of control, violence, and manipulation, arguing that Armando had turned a marital dispute into a calculated execution.
Back in September of 2020, the defendant terrorized two people. One of them he beat and bloodied. The other he murdered. On September 19th, 2020, three people went into the woods that you all walked through. One of them was tricked into going there. One of them was forced at gunpoint into those woods. One of them, him, the defendant, he went there to hurt and to kill. The one who was forced into those woods was Brittany Barone, the defendant's wife. This is how Brittany left those woods. She left beaten, she left bruised, and she left bloody. These pictures were taken days apart. You can see the swelling going down. You can see the bruising, the hemorrhaging in her eyes.
I don't understand how killers can just be so matter of fact, even after showing the brutality of what they are capable of, right? He was capable of that to his wife. I love you, so let me do this. Let me control you. Let me tell you these things. I want to this, that, and the third. Right? Even though you don't cherish the wife the way you're supposed to, you still want to control all of the things that come in and out of their life. I don't understand any of that. She went into the woods, of course, under gunshot. She has been coerced. She has been all of those things. I get it. And she's guilty of some of these things. But nobody goes into a relationship like that. She goes from a kiss in a parking lot, innocent kiss in a parking lot, to dragging a body into a park. How do you get from that? And only a person who is manipulated to the point where they're able to do heinous and inconceivable things would go from being a nice person, being a decent person, from being a person that has an innocent kiss in a parking lot, to dragging a body under a tarp into a park. Without the gunpoint, because she did all that without the gunpoint. Without pointing, she got rid of the body, and she stayed there with the body after her husband took off. Who does that?
She was beaten, she was bloody, and she was terrified. The person who was tricked into going into those woods was beaten too, but much worse. These diagrams were made at Jonathan Amaralt's autopsy. They show the injuries the defendant inflicted to Jonathan's head after the defendant beat him, cut him, and stomped on his head. On the diagram on the left, Every one of those marks is a separate injury. Injuries to the front of his head, to his face, to the left side of his head, to the right.
I find that difficult to watch, so I have to skip that kind of part, right? I can't see that kind of part. It's difficult to listen to. Of someone doing physical harm to another human being. Just difficult.
Real murderer did not have to go through a trial. The real murderer has not had to face the terrible facts of this brutal, senseless, and vicious murder. The real murderer never faced a jury. The real murderer was not even charged in Jonathan Amaralt's death. In fact, you are going to hear testimony from the real murderer during this trial. The state is going to ask you to believe every claim she makes and to convict Armando Barone largely based on her testimony. Her name is Brittany Barone.
So the defense is trying to say she did it. But the thing is, you have to have motive. You have to have motive. And that's one of the most serious things when it comes to a murder trial. It's one of the key elements of a murder trial. Motive. Motive. What would be the point of her doing that? Right? And you have to prove she had a motive. But if the text messages are as innocent as she says, then why, how could you prove? How could you prove that she wanted to go and hurt another human being? And no text messages, and they haven't had a relationship at all. No one can prove that. No one can say any of those things. But prosecution or the defense has to put on some kind of case. They have to prove that it could have been her. And this is where people come in. This is where the prosecution comes in and wants to do reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt. We have to foster reasonable doubt. We just have to get one juror to believe that maybe the wife did it. Maybe she did it on her own and this, that, and the third. But that's that one little thing. Did or was there a history of violence between her and her husband? Was there a history of manipulation between her and her husband? This is what they have to prove. If there was not any of that, they could probably prove motive. Who knows? Hey, juries come up, lawyers come up with all kinds of shit, right? Except that one little fact of motive. What was her motive?
Armando Barone did not kill Jonathan Amaralt.
Over the course of the trial, jurors heard Brittany's harrowing testimony, saw photos from the crime scene, and reviewed the physical evidence, including the murder weapon, the tarps, and Jonathan's blood-stained car.
The noise must have been awesome, just phenomenally loud. And it wasn't 3 shots. It wasn't that fast. You heard that there was pause in between. And Jonathan makes some noise. And Jonathan makes some noise. And Jonathan makes some noise.
The prosecution argued that Armando Barone was a controlling husband who lured Jonathan to his death, then forced Brittany to cover up the crime out of fear for her own life. The defense had a different theory. They suggested Brittany wasn't the victim, she was the aggressor. They claimed she had a motive, that she lied to investigators, and that Armando wasn't even present when the murder happened. They pointed to inconsistencies in her statements and argued that the real killer was the one sitting in the witness chair, not the defendant. But after days of emotional testimony and graphic evidence, the jury made their decision. It was time for the verdict.
Jury, Your Honor.
Seated.
Yeah, so everybody presented their evidence. You have to, as a defense attorney, you have to present some kind of case to your to the jury. You have to say, Your Honor, look, she was there too, right? She was there, she did her thing, blah, blah, blah. She could have been a killer, because you have to raise some kind of doubt, because it looks obviously like your client did it. But we have to throw some bones to the, we have to look like we coming up with a defense, although we know we can't come up with a defense, right? So the whole point is they subterfuge, or they cover up, they windmill, they do all of these things. But it comes down to the facts. And her story was more consistent than his. Her story, and he didn't testify. I don't think he testified. I don't know. It didn't show that he testified. But she came on and she testified, and she was guilty of several things. But she wasn't guilty of the final shot. Right. And that's the thing. He was the one who pulled the trigger. And she testified to that. And all of the evidence, forensic, gunpowder, you name it, led them to this conclusion. Right? Sure, she was there. She admitted she was there. Right? Admitted she was there. But she wasn't the final arbiter of this person's sentence of death. You all hit the like button, please. Hit the like button, please.
Everyone. So I understand that the jury's rendered a verdict, and now my clerk will take the verdict. Mr. Barone, you should stand.
If you face the jury, Mr. Brown. Would the foreperson of the jury please stand up? Madam Foreperson, case 213-2020 CR 308, has the jury reached a verdict?
We have.
How say you in charge number 1857629C, charging the defendant Armando Barone of first-degree murder? Do you find the defendant Armando Barone guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You find the defendant guilty?
Yes.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
Madam Foreperson, with respect to charge ID 1857643C, charging the defendant Armando Barone with kidnapping, do you find the defendant Armando Barone guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
That is guilty?
That is guilty.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
It took the jury just 3 hours to return a guilty verdict on all counts, including first-degree murder. The following day, Armando Barone was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is the mandatory sentence for first-degree murder in New Hampshire. Additionally, he received an extra 45 to 135 years for related charges, including kidnapping and criminal solicitation, ensuring that even if death somehow forgot him, the justice system wouldn't.
So my question is, how do you explain that to your kids? How do you explain that dad was so off his rocker? He was so off his rocker that he offed someone because they spoke to me or liked me, or I had a conversation with another human being. How do I live with knowing that I helped precipitate another human being's life being taken instead of taking this person's life? When I had the opportunity, I had the gun, I had the motive, I had all of those good things. When I had the opportunity to take this person out, she could have hurt her husband. She could have done anything. She didn't even have to kill. She didn't even have to off him. She could have incapacitated her husband to the point where they could have got out of there. Her and Jonathan could have got out of there alive. Why didn't she do that? Hurt him to the point of blah, blah, blah. She had access to the gun. She had an opportunity. She knew her husband was the way he was. I mean, see, fear would drive me. Fear would drive me to the point where I would be willing to do whatever was necessary to save the life And this is a classic case of, oh, I'm too afraid, right? She's too afraid to do whatever she needs to do. Okay. But when you have that uncontrollable jealousy in a spouse, when you have that kind of uncontrollable jealousy in a spouse, I mean, it leads to the emotional abuse that she had. It leads to the control that he got. Okay. Like I said, it stems from insecurity on the person's part. Insecurity, fear, the need to dominate. Okay. It destroys the safety and the trust in a relationship. Healthy relationships are built on mutual trust. That's why I don't understand relationships where you tell me I can or I can't or I do or I don't. I don't understand relationships like that. Okay. But when jealousy gets out of control, even the innocent behavior, like talking to a coworker, like catching a ride home, like even meeting somebody randomly in the mall, makes you lose your mind if you're my spouse. Getting on the stage, dancing in a dress with my ass out makes you lose your mind. There's something off about that. But I could never tolerate it. I could never be with a person that is that insecure about themselves that they would have that kind of response. I couldn't. Some people think that shit is nice. Some people think that shit is normal. Oh man, you better not. When I have a hint, when I get the hint that you have a problem with the thing, with some things that I do, and you can't tolerate those things, and you're consumed with the jealousy, you're consumed with the insecurity, I'm out. I'm outie. Okay. I'm not saying this is the case of that. What I am saying, small things lead to big things. Small feelings of insecurity, of need to control, lead to bigger things. And the minute I walk into a relationship and I can feel that you have the jealousy, I can feel that you have the insecurity, I can feel that from the beginning, it's not going to end well. It can't end well. That jealousy or that insecurity or that need to control is potential for domestic violence. It's a red flag. It's one of the leading motivators behind domestic violence or partner violence. When people begin to physically threaten, verbally threaten, to threaten to harm a person, it's clear that you have safety issues. It's clear it's time to go. Okay? It's important not to minimize that type of behavior. With this gentleman right here, with this dude right here, she saw those signs at the beginning. Oh, he jealous. He loved it me. Oh, he don't mean it. And then we find ourselves dragging a damn body under some bushes in a park. Or we find a coworker got beat up in the parking lot for no reason. This is where you find it. Dangerous jealousy is not a sign of love. It's not a sign of any of those things. The minute your spidey sense gets up there, nah, I don't think so, it's time to leave. Man or woman. Because women do the same thing too. Women get that goofy shit too. Cut up tires, break windows, come to your job. Women do all that stuff too. I don't care whether I got one baby by you or two. This is the kind of thing that should not happen. Okay? This is the kind of thing that should not happen. And a lot of people leave it too late. A lot of people think it's going to change. They're going to change. Once they get me, once they got me in their bed, once I'm in their house, then they ain't got to worry about it. They ain't got to tell me what to do. They ain't got to watch my phone. They ain't got to worry about what, when, how. But then you find out it wasn't about them. It wasn't about any of that. It was about controlling you and your behavior. That's why I'm so adamant when I hear men say control. Women don't know how. I got to lead. I got to do all these things. I'm not saying that that's what that means. I'm saying when women hear that men say we got to lead, we got to do this, we got to do that, that triggers something in them to say, look, you trying to put your foot on me and that's not going to work. I'm not saying that's how it is. I'm saying men ask, why is there a pushback? Because it triggers something in people that says they don't want to be controlled. Not that that's what you mean. That's not what I'm saying. That's what that invokes in some people that need that whole thing. So this is where we're at with beheading of a coworker. The offing of a coworker because of jealousy, because of uncontrollable jealousy, spousal control, manipulation, all of that. You all hit the like button, please. Thank you very much. Hit the like button, please. So this is our coverage of this young man destroyed his life, destroyed her life. Jealous husband lures wife's co-worker to the park and then forces her to try to behead him. Stand on his neck, he couldn't breathe. But that didn't work, so he just off and off shot him. Okay. It's a creepy tale of jealousy, madness, and the signs were already there. So this is a tale of you had the signs, you saw the red flags, yet you ignored them. And this is what I say, don't ignore the red flags because they're there for a reason. They're called red flags for a reason. They're there. Don't ever ignore them. They're there. Y'all hit the like button coming in and out. I will be back later. And I thank you for showing up for this session. I'll be going live all day. I'm just like that today. It'll be different subject after different subject. But thank you. Happy Father's Day, guys. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day.